Is it Mr. Bowich, is that right? Okay,
Bowditch, sir. Bowditch.
thank you, sir. Do you know how many times local law enforcement met with Mr. Cruz prior to the shooting?
I've heard of a variety of numbers. I believe it was between 30 and 40, sir.
Could you get us that information? Later.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Ma'am, is it Altera, is that right? Your name?
It's Lena.
Lena, okay. All right, Lena.
That's close.
All right. The profile, the risk assessment, let's apply what you do with what we've learned here. What happened here? How can you have 30 to 40 interventions? Was the man kicked out of school? Do we know?
Yes, sir, he was.
Okay. So the local cops meet him 30 or 40 times. He's kicked out of school. Would you say there's system failures when it comes to risk assessment?
Senator, I can't offer you an opinion on something that I have not studied. All I can speak,
Just in general.
in general, I can speak to our own research and how we talk about threat assessment.
How about yes?
There's a more comprehensive answer than that, but in terms of how,
why is yes not the right answer?
Because
you
I'm
get
not
kicked out of
familiar with the
school, the
details
cops
of
go
the
to your
case.
house 30 or 40 times because you're disruptive. Shouldn't that put you on somebody's risk assessment?
I can tell you that in situations that I've studied, a lot of the individuals that have engaged in these types of targeted attacks had engaged in concerning behavior before. They'd come to the attention of law enforcement and others for these type of behaviors. They elicited concern in the community. And for the most part, the interventions varied on how people responded to them. Again, whether they had committed a crime or not, whether they had risen to the level of imminent risk.
Okay.
I can't speak to this particular case, but that's what we've seen before.
Back to the FBI. When you got the call, you don't know why what did the supervisor tell the lady?
Well, sir, we have Director Ray immediately launched an inspection team to our CGIS West Virginia facility.
Is that inspection over? Is it done?
It continues. The inspection, the report is being
Do you have
completed.
any preliminary findings?
We do. We have a number of recommendations that came out
So
of it.
specifically, what made the supervisor believe you shouldn't pass this on?
That's one of the recommendations that came out, is the fact that the way the call was presented between the call taker to her supervisor, we have two different recollections, so we do not
Okay.
actually know what was presented. So in the future, one of the recommendations is there will be more fidelity on how that was presented and more of a thorough
Did
review
anybody
on the
look?
supervisor's part.
Nobody followed up and called the local cops. Do you know this guy?
No, sir.
Okay. Now, in terms of tools available to law enforcement, I've introduced legislation with Senator Blumenthal that will allow law enforcement agencies to go to a federal district judge or magistrate to petition for an extreme, what do we call this thing? Risk protection order, where you'd have to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the person in question is an imminent threat to themselves or others. Do you believe that would be a good tool to have available to the FBI and other law enforcement officers in situations like this?
Senator, anytime we can get more data to make a better decision, I think that's a good tool.
Well, it's not data. This is how do you use the data? I mean, would you support allowing federal judges and magistrates to receive requests from law enforcement officers like yourself to act in ex parte fashion if the evidence, in your view, warrants going to a judge to say this person is a danger to themselves or others? Do you think that's a tool that would be beneficial to you?
Not having read the legislation that's proposed, it's hard for me to say yes or no, but based on the face of it, it certainly sounds like a sensible issue for us to
Are you aware of what
support.
Florida did regarding risk orders?
I am not, sir.
Mr. Brandon, you deal with guns all the time. Would you like a tool like this to deal with people when there's plenty of evidence from the community and law enforcement that this person is becoming mentally unstable, a danger to themselves or others? Do you think there's a gap in our law by not having a tool like this?
Senator, thank you for the question. And as an expression, and within law enforcement, it's healthy to be on the left side of boom, which is, I think, what the lawyer's saying. So I would welcome it as long as there was a process that where we could go and it's not a law enforcement officer making that decision, but through a judge. I think it's healthy for the public. And through my job as an ATF agent in the street, I remember getting a call and making a house, knocking on the door, talked our way in. The guy was clearly mentally ill. And I went to the local sheriff's, passed the information on for officer safety. And so it was in that spirit. I did as much as I could with the information. I'm sure my law enforcement partners do the same. But to answer your question, I think it's healthy.
Okay, and just my observation here is that the man did everything but take an ad out in the paper, "I'm going to kill somebody." We tell our citizens to, if you see something, say something. Well, doesn't it become incumbent upon us as a society to do something? And that's what we're trying to do with this legislation, is to make sure if you see something, say something. Your government actually can do something. Senator Blumenthal.